Hi, I'm a Possum and I find garbage, and I just uploaded another review, but Fox copyright claimed it. Last time that happened, they never even looked at my dispute, so I just had to wait 30 days for the claim to expire. So now I gotta crank out another video real quick before the end of the month if I want to get my Patreon money. And that means going after the low-hanging fruit. So today's garbage is Virus Shark, one of the many terrible, low-budget sharksploitation movies directed by Mark Polonia. If you don't know, Mark and John Polonia were twin brothers who made a bunch of terrible shot-on-video movies going all the way back to 1985, and were perhaps most famous for the 1996 blockbuster video exclusive Feeders. I say were because John's dead now, but Mark is still making movies, and is one of the most prolific profiteers of potty cinema alive today, having directed nearly 80 movies as of the time of this video. That sounds impressive, until you see them. Let's get on with the review. The movie starts with a bunch of stock footage while our protagonist, Christy, explains that there's a global outbreak of some disease called Shovid-1, which started after some kangaroo humper got bit by a shark off the coast of Australia. Yeah, this movie was made during the height of the pandemic, and this was Mark Polonia's attempt at cashing in on it. Too bad he wasn't making shark movies 20 years ago. He could have made one called SARS Shark, or SHARS. So the shark virus infected millions of people, martial law was declared, and now a handful of Mark Polonia's friends are in some kind of undersea laboratory that looks exactly like an office building, which is really convenient for the production, and they're trying to find a cure by experimenting on sharks, both infected and not infected.
The answer lies in one of them, or all of them, or none of them.
Christie introduces us to the other characters Dracula 3000 style, which is to say, they just show the character's profile on screen while the narrator explains their single defining trait.
Duke Larson is our security, if you can call it that. I wonder why we need a soldier down here. He takes his job too seriously. It makes me nervous.
Then we got a title and opening credits, so we cut to a stock footage CGI ship, and a shot of an elevator coming down, then CGI stock footage of a base on Mars with bubbles superimposed in front of it to make it look like it's underwater. Then Mark Polonia comes off the elevator wearing a filthy face shield that looks like it's older than me. He gives the security guy, Duke, a cart with an infected cadaver. Then he gets back on the elevator and reverse films himself back up to the surface. Duke peeks at the cadaver, then a shark growls as it swims by. I've seen this sort of thing in other bad shark movies. You know sharks are physically incapable of making vocalizations, right? They can't growl, they can't roar, they can't pick up the phone and order pizza. They can't do anything, but they always make noises in these movies, and someone has to consciously decide to drop in a sound effect to make that happen. Why? Do they think it makes them scarier? Because the thing that makes sharks scary in real life is that you don't hear them coming. You know, like in that movie Jaws, the original shark movie that all these other shark movies rip off? Why don't you try ripping off what actually works? Anyway, Christy f***s around in the high school swimming pool full of sharks that are invisible part of the time, and this prick, Gregory, does that stupid thing bad horror movies do where he sneaks up behind her and puts his hands on her shoulder and startles her in a fake-out jump scare, which is something no one in the history of the world has ever done before.
What are you looking at?
Damn, you startled me.
Christy tells him the sharks are more aggressive than normal, and Gregory says they got a new cadaver from the surface to experiment with, but Christy says the last two cadavers they got didn't show signs of pathogens. Okay? We cut to the engineer, Richter, noticing seawater leaking from a thing, and then we cut to Duke and his f***ing Ruger 1022 bringing the cadaver to one of the scientists, Anne, who gets mad at him for hitting on her.
You disgust me. Now go find some other damsel in distress who might need your protection.
I guess she doesn't like dudes with red skin, because this guy has a great personality.
Have fun.
Anne extracts some blood from the cadaver and examines it, and makes sure to say what she's thinking out loud so the audience knows what's happening.
The normal pathogen is attacking the Shovid-1 virus.
She calls Christy and tells her to come down to the lab, and then Gregory talks to some disease control agent on the surface named Muldoon. She tells Gregory to terminate the sharks in the pool because they're not giving them any results, and it turns out these two used to a detail that's completely irrelevant. Richter finds more leaks, then Christy tells Anne she thinks the bites on the cadaver were caused by a mako shark, not that it matters, and then Anne shows Christy the things attacking the things, and they realize they may be on the verge of discovering a cure. I'm on the verge of curing my bowel obstruction, excuse me. Another shark growls. Then Anne makes a small penis joke about Hellboy because he carries a gun. Then Gregory comes in and they all have a meeting. Gregory says Muldoon wants them to kill the sharks. Christie objects. Then Richter says he thinks the facility is going to implode in a few weeks. Gregory insists they continue their research. Then Anne says they may be close to finding a cure. So Gregory says they need to capture a new shark to continue their research. Just then, a foreboding creaking sound echoes throughout the facility. No, wait, sorry, that was my lower back. Then we cut to Red Skull shooting at rubber shark puppets in the pool. They open a big pair of doors and use the shredded remains of the sharks to lure in new ones, and 2 plastic grabbers from Dollar Tree spray-painted silver lower into the water to grab one. We see Richter f*** around some more, then Gregory talks to Muldoon again. He tells them the facility's about to implode, but they've managed to fight a single strain of the virus.
Have you ever thought about what the possessor of the cure for Shabbat 1 holds in their hands?
Salvation?
The world. Gregory, let me tell you what I can offer you.
So these two are obviously up to no good, but who knows? Maybe they can be trusted with the healthcare of the human species more than the government and a handful of evil corporations can. Meanwhile, Frylock asks Richter how long until the facility implodes, and Richter wonders if they'll just be abandoned down there after they find the cure. Then Clifford gets called back to the pool. When he gets there, Christie tells him to use a life hook to snag the shark so she can get a blood sample, I guess because they can't just use the Dollar Tree grabbers like they did earlier for some reason. We cut to the lab where the corpse moves around under the tarp and an orange blob falls to the floor. Or maybe it's supposed to be red and they're just using a camera. In any case, Anne somehow manages to not see the brightly colored blob moving around, nor can she see the cameraman's reflection in the computer monitor, and then the blob jumps onto her face. Back at the pool, Christie gets a sample from the shark, but it bites Zoidberg, somehow without leaving any marks on him. I guess rubber teeth aren't very sharp. So even though the shark is obviously diseased, that being the very reason why they're taking blood samples from it, neither of them seem too concerned about him getting bit.
I don't get paid enough for this crap.
Christie calls Gregory and tells him she got the blood samples, but the shark somehow managed to escape. What, they leave the door open? Gregory then tells Muldoon he's in, and then he pulls a gun out of a drawer. We see Richter looking out a porthole that's just photoshopped onto a wall, and a shark suddenly fades in.
Damn!
I guess he didn't expect to see a shark in the shark-infested waters where they built this facility specifically to study sharks. Then Richter taps on a thing with a scientific instrument and realizes the pressure's rising. My pressure is also rising, not from being at the bottom of the ocean, but from the bottom of a bottle. Mr. Krabs goes to the lab looking for Anne and can't find her, so he just pours alcohol on his shark bite and wraps it in a bandage, because apparently that's all it takes to treat a shark bite. Richter runs into Gregory in the hallway and tells him the pressure is increasing faster than he initially thought, and now they have less than 48 hours before the facility implodes. Gregory says they have plenty of time to evacuate, and tells Richter not to tell anyone. Then we see Anne shambling around with her face all f***ed up. More sharks growl. And one of them bites some kind of cable. Christie goes into the lab to tell Anne she has another blood sample, but she's not there, so she decides to run the test herself, and realizes she's found the cure. Now let's see if she can find Mark Polonia's sense of shame. Just then, Gregory shows up and points a gun at her, demanding she hand over the antidote. Gossamer sits on a bed so low that I think it's just a mattress on the floor, and there's just a case sitting on a pedestal in the background. Why's that there? Did they just need something to put there and didn't have a better prop? Why don't you reach up my ass and pull out a fistful of polyps and put that up there? Anyway, Knuckles goes to sleep, then Richter f***s around with the computer and finds out they're gonna lose life support in 10 hours, and then he just happens to look out a window and sees the cable the shark bit. We cut to Gregory and Christie, nothing happens, and we cut back to Elmo on the bed. Some stock footage of cells indicates he's mutating or something, but nothing comes of it. Then Richter sees a shark outside another window. Back in the lab, for no reason, Gregory explains to Christie his evil plan to steal credit for the cure and get rich off it, and Christie realizes he and Muldoon are working together and asks him how he knows Muldoon won't double-cross him.
There's too much at stake. We're both in it 50-50.
I think your math skills and her math skills are slightly different.
Doesn't matter. You won't be around long enough to find out.
So even though Gregory was planning to kill Christy, instead of just doing it, he explains everything he's about to do, giving time for some Deus Ex Machina to run in and bite him.
Oh my god, Anne!
So I guess Anne is a zombie now, and she just ran in, bit Gregory, then immediately disappeared, and we don't even get a shot of her running away before Gregory knocks Christy out instead of just shooting her like he was planning to do and has no reason not to. And he grabs a box with a cure and runs past Richter, who tries to tell him they're losing life support, but he doesn't listen. Maybe he'll listen to this. Gregory goes back to his office and calls Muldoon, but it turns out she's been infected. She tells him she's sending an extraction team which never shows up, so I don't even know why they had this line in the movie. Then Gregory pulls out the shaft authorization key and leaves. Richter walks around the brightly lit hallway with a flashlight and sees Anne shambling around and doesn't realize she's a zombie, and he goes to the lab just in time for Christy to wake up. She tells him Gregory betrayed them and took the antidote. Then Richter tells her in the cameraman's reflection they're about to lose life support and they need to evacuate. So they go looking for Bob the Tomato. Gregory walks down the hall, then Richter and Christy find Stimpy and tell him they need to get to the elevator before Gregory abandons them down there like a baby on prom night. Gregory makes his way down the stairs while Anne goes up the stairs in a shot that goes on for way too long, and they run into each other, which makes no sense because we just saw Gregory on the same floor as Richter, who was also just on the same floor as Anne, which would seem to suggest they were all on the same floor a minute ago. In any case, Gregory points a gun at Anne, but for no discernible reason, he doesn't shoot her, so Anne grabs his leg. Gregory fights her off and runs away, then Anne chases him. Christy, Richter, and Kool-Aid Man catch up to Gregory and they have a shootout in front of the elevator door while Christy and Richter take cover behind an empty plastic garbage can. They could have filled it with Mark Polonia's movies, but I guess that would have been too much work.
It's too late, you can't stop me!
Just as the elevator arrives, Darth Maul shoots Gregory in the leg.
Don't worry, I shot him in the femoral artery.
How do you know that?
Will bleed to death before he gets up top.
How do you know you hit him in the femoral artery? There's no blood or anything. Were you aiming for it? Why don't you just aim for his head? Why was that foot there? Gregory makes his way up the elevator, the gang sees a shark outside, and then it bites a pipe thing which I guess was actually supposed to be the elevator shaft, like it was big enough to wrap its jaws around it and crush it, killing Gregory in the process. We cut to the lab where Christy injects Blitzo with the last of their antidote. They call the surface and tell a stock photo of a guy in a hazmat suit to send down a submersible to pick them up. But then a shark bites another cable and they lose signal.
Hello? Hello? Damn it!
Richter says there's schematics for the facility in the mechanical office, and they might be able to find extra oxygen. Christy decides to stay in the lab and make more antidote, and then we see Anne on the stairs again. Nothing happens. Charmander and Richter see the shark again, nothing happens again, and then the orange blob sneaks up on Christy in the lab, and it somehow gets on her desk when she's not looking.
What the hell?
Christy squirts some of the antidote onto the blob, which growls for some reason, causing steam to shoot out. So I guess she defeated the orange blob, and she didn't even need millions of last-second mail-in votes to do it. Then we see Anne in the bathroom where she sees her reflection and realizes her face is all f***ed up. In the mechanical office, Richter looks at the schematics and sees something, but then it cuts back to the lab where Christy gets attacked by Anne, who gets shot in the head by Big Macintosh.
Get away from me! Thank God you guys got here just in time.
Richter says there's an escape pod on level D. Yeah, there was an escape pod this whole time and none of them knew about it until he read the schematics. The gang run up the stairs, down the hallway, then they run back down the stairs, and they make their way to the escape pod. For some reason, the door is designed in such a way that they have to go in one at a time, so the Crimson Chin tells Christy and Richter to go in first. But then the door malfunctions as he's going through and he gets stuck. He tells them to launch without him, which they gladly do.
It's too late for him.
The facility implodes, then Christy and Richter see the shark again.
What the bloody hell is that?
It's the virus shark.
What drives that demon animal?
Oh my God, look!
Richter says they'll be at the surface in 45 minutes. We see the escape pod floating around and looking all janky because they had to key it out of the stock footage it came from. And I guess 45 minutes is too long for Christy because she falls asleep and has nightmares about Ann. As they near the surface, the shark attacks the escape pod, so Richter pushes a button and electrocutes it because it could just do that, I guess.
This should give him something to think about.
There! Take that!
But then the shark swims right at them. Sometime later, Christy washes up on a beach somewhere. After taking nearly a full minute to stand up, she narrates.
At first I thought it had been a bad dream.
It turns out civilization has collapsed while she was under the sea. She walks around looking for other people and finds a guy sleeping on the ground next to some rubber body parts. Christy asks him whether she can find some help, but he doesn't respond because he's rude. She continues walking and finds a perfectly clean shoe next to a perfectly clean shirt, and then she comes to a barn and just decides to let herself in. She finds a can on the ground and just starts eating out of it. It's only been maybe a few hours and she's already resorting to eating whatever she finds. She looks around and a man and old woman run up and grab her.
Well, what do we have here? Today's our lucky day.
Christy explains that she's a scientist and she discovered a cure and asks them to bring her to the authorities, but they don't listen. The guy introduces themselves to her.
This is JoJo, I'm Mace, and that's Garbage.
Garbage? Hey, we found him. Mace steals the antidote and tells JoJo to tie up Christy, and orders Garbage to go fill up a tiny thermos with water.
But Mace! What? Some skirt shows up and you forget we have to survive.
So I guess Garbage goes out to refill their water supply, which consists of this one tiny thermos bottle. Hey, if Jesus could feed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, then I'm sure a man named Garbage could sustain 3 people with 1 pint of water. Inside the barn, Mace and JoJo wonder if Christy is lying about who she is.
Maybe she's a marauder. Hasn't turned yet.
What's a marauder?
One of us, except you're driven by the madness to drink blood.
So Mace gets the idea to use the antidote to make himself rich, and Christy says she can make more if she can get to a laboratory, and JoJo blurts out that there's a research facility 30 miles away before Mace cuts her off. We then cut to Garbage having a run-in with some marauders, but he keeps them at bay with his toy gun. He makes his way to a disgusting pond and fills the thermos with standing water, but then the marauders show up, so he shoots them and walks away. Back at the barn, this happens.
You're pretty. Real pretty. All we get to look at is marauders.
I think the director told him to act aggressive, and he took that to mean he should just yell all his lines. So Mace resents Christy because she got to live safely under the sea while Evelyn went crazy and died on the surface, and then Garbage comes back.
What?
So Garbage just left and came back and nothing happened to him. So I don't even know why the movie felt the need to send him away, other than I guess the director just didn't want him at the barn for a while for whatever reason. Mace tells JoJo to come inside, then they discuss their plan to paddle upriver in a boat to the old research base, with the intent to ransom Christy and the cure in exchange for power.
Why not walk?
Too many marauders.
You're forgetting about the sharks.
Christy explains that the sharks are infected too, I guess because these idiots didn't know that.
Maybe walking ain't such a bad idea. I never did like the water.
What?
But Mace decides to go by boat anyway. But then a marauder just runs up and starts eating Garbage. I guess because they just left the door open. I left my door open once. No one came in. The others run outside and encounter more marauders, and Christy escapes while Mace and JoJo shoot at them. Christy somehow cuts her rope by scraping them against a tree, and then says to herself that she's gonna take the boat.
I have to find that boat. I'll take my chances with the shark.
She finds the boat, but takes so long moving it that Mace and JoJo catch up to her, and I guess she didn't hear them running up through the tall grass.
Screw you!
There'll be time for that later.
Mace tells JoJo to launch the boat, but she hesitates because she's worried about the sharks.
See, you big baby? There's nothing to be afraid of.
Mace is about to shoot Christy when some guy shoots him. I think he's supposed to be in the military, but I can't tell because his costume is terrible. He asks Christy if she has the antidote, and he tells her that he has orders to bring her to a submarine that'll take her to a secret base where the last 130 people on Earth live. Yeah, 130 people. That should provide just enough genetic diversity to bring back the Habsburg dynasty. While riding the submarine, Christy stands by a fence in a parking lot that's supposed to be the deck, and she decides there's no hope for humanity and just throws a PNG of the antidote overboard. And then she jumps into the water.
Water.
We see the stock footage shark eat the antidote, and then the movie ends. So that's Virus Shark. Bye. Thanks to Tone, Alex, Attack Life, Virtual 699, Cameron Delshot, Contessa, Science, Diesel Weasel, Duke Snuggle, Eduardo Sanchez, Ari Kivadari, Eric Hess, Frackle Soraya, Coco, Goma Flame, Gothic, Trash, G Busy, Cameron Nintendo, Humble Clown, Ivan Stansbury, J Lady, Jimmy Jam, Milberg, John Cleveland, Josh Life, Camilla Schwartz, Cano, 1000, Liquid Quebec, Levi Judge, Sleep, Lil Durante, Lipstick, Marco Magmire, Marcus Aurelius, Max Billy, Daniel Taylor, Team 30 Feet, Peanut Warlock, Paco, Pumpton, Ricky Peruga, Robert Bishop, Robocop, Salter, Salty Pumpkin, Scott Devo, Sir Badass, Random Landlord, Thomas Brown, Tiberian Luke, Tony Belmonte, Toxic Masculinity, Suzuki, Twilight City Studios YouTube channel, Dupar Superboy, Wolfram AC and Zenith.